So, as I said, we're happy to have you here in this informational session for the Afghan services application. My name is Pedro Blanco. I'm a program analyst with the refugee team with Oregon Department of Human Services, and I'm going out to allow the rest of my team, who's also here, to introduce themselves. Maybe I should start with Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie, and I'm a program analyst with the ODHS Refugee Program. I'll pass it on to Amra.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Amra Biberic, and I am the State Refugee Program Manager. Welcome. And I'll pass it on to Misty.
Good morning. My name is Misty Shoney, and I am a policy analyst with the Refugee Program. And is someone not muted? It's echoing.
Yes, please do mute yourselves if you are not talking.
Or if you are in a phone and a computer at the same time, that might create also the echo. So mute one of them if you are ready to talk.
And I will pass it to Mike.
Hi, my name is Mike Norman, and I'm also a program analyst with the State Refugee Team. And I think Sohail is the only one that hasn't gone yet.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sohail Alami. I am the State Refugee Housing Coordinator and a program analyst with the ODHS Refugee Team.
All righty, so this is our team. I'm going to start projecting our presentation. We have a PowerPoint presentation, and let me share. All righty, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All righty. So again, as I said, we're going to be talking today about the Afghan services application. As we all know, on October 20th, there was a new release announcing from Oregon Department of Human Services inviting community agencies to apply for a portion of $3.6 million in funding that is available to provide services and support eligible individuals from Afghanistan. So as we know, as the result of the U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, tens of thousands of Afghans individuals were evacuated from Afghanistan and brought into the U.S. for resettlement. And that's the reason we decided to use this money. We received those funds and to provide more services for eligible individuals in the state of Oregon. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline of these services. As I said before, the announcement was on October 20th of 2023. We are holding the informational session today for that funding announcement. And then on the application, we stated that the deadline for the submission will be a week from now on November 10th. By 11:59 p.m. Our team, our ODHS refugee team, will review those applications, and we will be determining who we're gonna be selecting by November 24th, and on the same date, we're going to be notifying those organizations of the approval, and we're going to start the contract, negotiating the contract, and writing the contract on the same date. So who's going to be the population eligible for these services? So they have to be, I mean, for these Afghan services, an individual must have been granted one of the following immigration statuses. And in a nutshell, they have to be citizen or national of Afghanistan that were paroled in the U.S. between July 31st, 2021 until September 30th. There's other requirement. There's other individuals. Let's say if someone who's a spouse of a child of someone who was uh, parole into the U.S. on those dates and they join later, they could also be eligible for benefits. Number C is unaccompanied children. We don't have that program in Oregon, so we're not going to be seeing parents who came later um, of those children that came through that program. But any citizen and national from those dates that they had any parole status, that would be an eligible population. And if once that we're writing the contract, we're going to be also talking about that, and we are always be available to clarify any information about those who are eligible for those services. Then who can apply for this funding, right? Um, our Oregon Department of Human Services refugee program, we are inviting those culturally responsive community-based organizations and resettlement agency as well that provide those services to immigrant refugees in Oregon, so they can apply for that funding opportunity. So a community-based organization is defined as a public organization or private nonprofit organization that is representative of a certain community, and provide services to this segment of the community, so engaging them in meetings their needs like human, educational, environmental, or any public safety community needs that they might have. And then also a nonprofit organization must, for the contract, they need to provide proof that they're registered with Oregon Secretary of State as an Oregon-based nonprofit organization, and of course, providing that proof of the IRS tax exemption of being a 501c3 organization. The funding is approximately $3,550,000 that will be distributed to those organizations so they can provide those services to individuals and families eligible from our Afghanistan, and it's going to be through September 30th of next year. That funding is divided into different categories. We're going to be talking about those categories soon, um, and it's based on the criteria for those community needs and current gaps that we have identified in services, so we can continue supporting that community. So those applicants, they may apply to receive any total amount of the funding, and they also may apply for any number of service categories. What is important here is that the applications, they should detail each service category separately, and each service category will be also examined separate on its own merit. So we're gonna be doing that in separate assessment. And funding will be prioritized for culturally and linguistically specific services for individuals and families from Afghanistan. And we will evaluate each application, and that's how we're going to be, the whole team will be determining the application approvals and also the amounts and those who are the denials too. So now we're gonna be talking about each service that and the breakdown. So the next slides will show you the services, the amount of funding available, and also some examples of activities that we could see in those services. Like, of course, housing assistance is the first one because we all know housing cost, and it's the one of the biggest needs in our communities, and that's why we are making available of the total about 40% of that funding, which is going to be $1,500,000. An important note is that the service shall not exceed 7,000 per household, and we can talk. We know that sometimes there's some things that might be out of the control of the family, but we can assess those situations independently. But the threshold for per household is 7,000. And some examples of those housing assistance services, it would be direct short-term rental assistance, and also direct short-term utility assistance, and security deposit and moving costs when family they need to go from one location to another one if they need to move house, and so we can also support them with that. The other category is health and wellness services. We are allowing $200,000 for those services, and some examples will be peer support, uh, targeted wellness groups, activities for specific interests of the population. Some examples is meditation groups or women sewing groups that they could do, health and emotional wellness education classes, adjustment groups, and skill building groups for that population. The other service will be the senior service. We're allowing $75,000 for those services. One important note for that is that we will be prioritizing culturally and linguistically specific services for seniors that are 60 years or older. Of course, from Afghanistan, they are in the area of Beaverton and Salem because of the high concentration of that population in that area. Some examples of senior services are helping them accessing mainstream aging services with the community, information about how they can access those services. Um, Services that are not available in the community, such as interpretation and translation services, social and cultural activities, helping them with health, behavioral health support. Sometimes they need help. They also need help with citizenship, naturalization, and counseling. How to apply for those services. Also helping them access independent living resources, and also transportation, home care services, and any adult care, adult daycare that they need. The next one, it's youth mentoring services, $75,000. And this will also be prioritized for culturally and linguistically specific program for youth, ages between 15 and 24 years of age. Of course, from Afghanistan, and that includes some sport activities also that could be provided in the Portland, Beaverton, and Salem areas. Some examples could be sport activities, opportunities for social engagement, providing education on the American culture, but also activities that help them maintain their cultural heritage, helping youth engaging with in civic and community service activities, helping them with tutoring and homework, transitioning from high school to from middle school to high school, or high school to post secondary education, and also helping them with building skills, resume drafting, understanding what the workers' rights are, since many of them will be the first time entering into the workforce, and also developing health and financial literacy. This is a very important one too. Employment services. We are making available $450,000, where for the following, and we want to prioritize the following employment services, like short-term vocational training. Some examples: CNA, welding, food services, childcare provider, beauty and cosmetology. Those are some of the professions that we have heard from the community, so that we are calling those out. Skills recertification and recredential services. um, some people, they need help with credentials, so that's something that we want to make available too. Community-based English as a second language and English learning services, um, providing classes in those communities settings, like libraries, community centers, or any other location that you could provide those services. Um, so this of course will include classes for individuals, groups, and English conversation groups. Also, women's economic empowerment services that help women, uh, training, recredential services, English as a second languages, and driver's education training as well. And all other additional examples, we mentioned skill building, resume drafting, job search and referral to job opportunities, and assistance with job interviews and orientation, as well as job workshops. Food assistant, we are making available $250,000 to providing culturally specific food for individual and family from Afghanistan, and also emergency assistance. We all know that there are times that uh, family dynamic, things happen where there's unexpected medical expenses, and then they need help emergency with food. So that's one of those examples. Case management, $500,000 for case management, so that we can help completing the need assessment, providing those referrals to different programs as English as a second language, employment, health services, immigration services, housing, tracking the participation in the services. And we're going to talk about reporting also in the application. We talked about how the things that need to be reported for those services, and also providing community orientation that may include like learning about the landlord and tenant responsibilities, knowing where some services are located, like hospital, fire departments, police stations, um, assisting with navigation, with transportation, how to create a bank account, maybe uh, credit, and helping to understand all those new things like the road signs and things like that. Immigration and legal services, that's also an important one, because many of them, they either need to adjust status, or they need to re-parole or apply for some of those services. So a legal orientation or immigrations on immigration statuses and their protection, uh, trainings or seminars about relevant immigration related legal assistance topics, consultation to determine those assistant legal needs, helping to replace any lost or damaged immigration documents, since they're very important. For example, the Employment Authorization Card, the EAD, providing interpretation services in order to explain forms and how to complete those immigration forms, and assisting also with securing the fee waivers, and also representing those clients in any mandatory in-person immigration related appointment. So those are all the services that we have. They total to the $3.5 million that we have available. The next we're gonna talk about the application submission. We don't require a standard format, but we want to ensure that all the questions on the application are answered, so you can receive full consideration for your application. Also, if you are partnering with any other agency or nonprofit organization for these services, please submit a letter of that entity stating that they are aware of that they will be supporting that application, including their an illegal document including the letterhead, so we know that it's from them. Um, so once that you answer all those questions and fill out the application, please send those to our refugee policy inbox by that time, that date on November 10th by 11:59 p.m. Because we were going to be strict on the application process and be able to move forward, so we're not going to be considering anything submitted after that. Um, Important, I know that in the past emails are sent. Sometimes we don't know if they're received or not. We're going to be sending a confirmation that we have received those applications within 2 business days. If you don't hear from us after you submit the application after 2 days, let us know, but we shall be sending those confirmation emails that your application has been received. So how we're gonna score those applications? So each service has a maximum point, and each category. So the service description, it's a maximum of 40 points. The service area and execution, 30 points. Experience in serving immigrant or refugee community, a maximum of 15 points. Also capacity, we know that hiring can be something that many organizations are experiencing, so a maximum of 15 points. And then there's some additional questions that they're not score, but the answers will also be used for full consideration. And then our last slide, it's about some negotiable items that we might have. Of course, once that we select these organizations, we can start the contract, and we are going to be talking about, okay, the amounts of the contract, how much money it's going to go into the contract, what's the process for the invoicing, and also the time frame of the contract award, how long it's going to be. We for sure need to collect data to provide that information to our federal partners. So the data requirements, we're going to be talking about that, the collection of that data, how those services are going to be provided, and we can talk about the description and talked about the services, and also the number of individuals served. We want to have outcomes and the best outcomes to for that population, so we can also negotiate those outcomes as well. So I wanted to go a little. I know that I went a little fast, but I wanted to allow time for all of you to ask your questions, especially because some of you don't have access to the chat. So now it's the time. If you have any question, if you need us to clarify anything about this funding and this communication.
Pedro, maybe we could stop projecting, or is it Stephanie?
Yeah.
Or you? Yeah. Okay.
No, I stopped. I was moving things around. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No problem.
Okay, Jaya is asking what is the timeline for the funding. And Jaya, when you're referring timeline, it's it will be through September 30th, 2024. Yeah, it ends on September 30. So, Kosrat, do you have your hand up?
I do. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for this, Pedro. That was a mouthful. It's hard to remember everything, but one thing I captured was the 7,000 for the housing. Housing is the most important thing part, as you guys noticed in your information. My question is, we do have a little funding with the DHS also. When we have a limited time to, like, we give 3,000 for rent or like application fee, whatever. If we do that, this 7,000 will be overlapping with that one, or we could do both.
Hi, Kasrat. So, are you asking if the same rental assistance could be provided in the same month? Then we would like to avoid that duplication.
Not the same month. For us, we have like 3 months. Within 90 days, we could pay 3,000.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have like some exceptions. We could go beyond. But can we, after that 3 months, give try to pay down to the 7,000?
Kosrat,
Yes.
So the 7,000, this is for the contractors to apply for services. So the program doesn't even exist yet. So we can't really give you guidance yet on what to do. Because what you're referring to is actually jobs payments, which is another program. So we can staff it offline later.
Okay.
But right now
Okay.
the 7,000, that's a limit that for contractors, if someone receives a contract to apply or that's applying for services, in their proposals, we would not be approving programs that provide more than $7,500 in rental assistance. But it doesn't exist yet.
Okay, thank you.
And I think Vesna has her hand up.
Hi, everybody. This is Vesna from SOAR Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. And I have a question regarding, the how to, you asking that we mention how many individuals we can serve. So my question is for housing assistance, how you actually how we can create that, because individuals in one household, is that how we need to project the numbers, or you are just thinking for the housing only the households? If you can just explain, it's a little bit confusing for me, because if we putting the applying for individuals, we need to kind of thinking about whole household, whole members in one household. Is that what you are looking for in application?
I can take that. So for housing, we are looking at how many households you would be providing rental assistance or housing assistance to. When we say we would need projected numbers from all of those who are going to apply. For example, if somebody's applying for employment services dollars, we would like to know how many individuals you're going to provide employment services to, or if you're going to provide youth mentoring services, how many people you're going to provide youth mentoring services to. So that's what we're looking for. For housing, we're going to look at households, not individuals.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that in application is kind of explained correctly. If you can
Okay.
check the question, maybe you should just underline that so we can put the households, not individuals.
Okay, I'm gonna look at that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All righty. More about it?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. This is Morwari, Program Manager at LCS Northwest. I have a question about prioritizing individualized. I understand that this money goes for the people who entered beginning of July 21 till end of September 13, but some of these potential clients already received rental assistance from, in the format of previous program that we have for Afghan rental assistance. And given that there is no central database here for us to track, it is potential that we pay some clients more than 9 months. I mean, that we already paid them 9 months and now they are coming again to get more money. Wondering, is there any way to prioritize at least those that have not received rental assistance after or received much less months of rental assistance given their date of arrival? As a matter of example, those that arrived at the beginning of April 2023, they received just 1 month or 2 months of rental assistance. But those that they received are those that came, for example, beginning of October 2021, sometimes receive even more than 12 months of rental assistance given the money that they get from the RMP funds. So is there any way to prioritize those that arrive later
Thank you,
or
Marguerite. I'm gonna
after July 2023?
Thank you, Marguerite. I'm gonna try and take that one on as well. So the date ranges that were shown, that is for eligibility. That means people who arrive between these dates are eligible to receive any of the services that is set by ORR and federal statute. So it's anybody who arrived after July, Afghan parolees who arrived after July 31st, 2021 and September 30th of 2023, and then other Afghans who arrived, like SIVs, refugees, people whose asylum have been granted that arrived after July 21st, 2021. So that's for eligibility purposes. For your programming and prioritization, we are not putting a limit on who you are going to be serving, but we expect you to do a needs assessment when you are providing rental assistance. So the housing assistance should be provided on an as-needed basis because these funds are not going to cover every individual Afghan who is currently falling within that eligibility criteria. The housing money needs to be dispersed on a need basis. So if a client comes to you, you do a needs assessment, you see that they still need rental assistance, and they might have received 1 or 2 months of rental assistance prior to this from your organization or another organization. But if there is need, you can provide the rental assistance. If you feel like there isn't a need to provide them that rental assistance, then you shouldn't be providing that rental assistance.
Thank you so much, Sohar, for clarification. I got it, but operational wise, it's becoming very difficult because again, it becomes the same situation that we have. There is no central database to track if anyone has received rental assistance previously or not. And unfortunately, there is some limitation for us to, to do the assessment. We have to give benefit of that and relying to the information. So I understand certainly your point that there's eligibility for everyone, but I was just wondering maybe to observe equity to be fair to everyone that are eligible, maybe there should be some terms, some conditions that give us some more clarification on the way forward. Maybe those that arrive later, those that receive less money, the less rental assistance than before. These are all this connection, and equity is always very important. But I understand if as an organization, you do not want, you have your own limitation. Thank you so much.
Yes, and you can build that in your application when you're submitting your proposed services application. You can build that in and say you're gonna prioritize individuals who arrived later, and that should be fine with us.
Thank you.
Okay, I think next we have Amanda.
Hi, thank you. Are there any ORR guidelines for case management services? Specifically, question number 2 does ask, do services conform to ORR guidelines? But I don't see that listed in the actual NOFO.
I can take that one. So it's listed that the actual case management funding is actually state funding, so it has different requirements, so it's not listed there. You can use within the application, there should be a site to kind of what case management is in the eyes of ORR to kind of align services, but it doesn't have to fall exactly like that the fund, because it's a different funding source. So that's why case management doesn't cite the actual requirements of the case management specifically, because the funding type is different.
Okay, thank you.
I think next we have Mike. You're muted, Mike.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call it a question from the chat, just make sure it's not missed. And Claire asked the same question that Amanda had asked, so that one has been covered. This one, hi, David. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say hi, David, from Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. I have 2 questions. One is, will ODHS offer partial awards if they can't meet the full amount requested in our application? That's question 1. And 2, is there a page or word count maximum for the application?
Do you want me to answer that one? I can answer that one too. First one, that is a possibility, because we do have those amounts budgeted for the specific areas of service. And so if we receive large numbers, depending on which applications are approved and the budget amounts, there may be some negotiation there and partial awards, because we don't know how much we'll receive in requests from those service types. Second question, is there a page or word count maximum for the application? No.
Alrighty. I saw that Murvarid had her hand up, but then she put it down. I just want to make sure that you don't have another question, Murvari.
No, thank you so much. No, I was just trying to fix it. Thanks for.
Alrighty. Okay, I don't see any other question in the chat. Do we have any other question, clarification? Okay, there's someone with a hand up. I don't know if it's that their name, Urgent?
Yes, it's Argent.
Okay,
Hi.
Argent, sorry.
Hi, Argent with Afghanistan Oregon Association. And I do have one question about, in terms of employment services, something that we've noticed, because we do have, we want to target women training and empowerment, re-credentialing. But we noticed that many women have kids. And how can we, I guess, is there something that you've seen that works before, like, getting a daycare center, or is there like something that we should implement that you would see us doing and using some of the funding for that? Or is there like a limit, I guess, like when you say employment services, just only spend on the re-credentialing and the training, do not spend it on the kids, or like, things that would affect being able to bring in maximum, impactful people that would be impacted. Thank you.
So I can answer that in general. So there are a lot of childcare resources, kind of depending if they're receiving benefits and what they're engaged in, if they're engaged in activities, and if it's a single parent, 2 parent. There's a lot of pieces to that. So if you're doing a program that's specific, I don't think that adding supports to support the activity in that type of way, like childcare center, something with a structured plan, it wouldn't automatically say that it wouldn't be approved. We would really have to review it and make sure that it falls in qualifications and they align together, I think. So I wouldn't discourage you from submitting, but we would have to review it. I can't really give you a solid answer at this moment on that. Because I don't know what it will say, and I don't know what other resources are already available in the community that could maybe help support a program like that.
Yeah, no, that actually is perfect. Thank you. That's perfect. I think that's all. I guess just to clarify, I've read the application, and from what it makes sense, does all the money support have to go to the Afghans who have come in the past 2 years? I would assume then, like, and even with like housing, like if there's multiple people living, but one person is like a roommate, and they were here many years, so they would disqualify, and we would just prorate it basically to okay, cool, that makes sense. Well, and I guess just one last question. In terms of admin, I believe it was a 15% maximum. We work virtually currently since we had been waiting on our status, and thankfully we just received it. And now we're trying to work towards getting an office. Would I guess budgeting some of that funding, would that be appropriate for like a space as well, since we plan to look at other grants as well to help us with that? In terms of admin, like up to 15%, I think that's what the limit was.
Up to 15% is the maximum limit for admin charges. I don't want to discourage you from putting space on there. We wouldn't be purchasing space, but if there is a need for space to provide the service, you can always put it on your proposal and we'll review it. And
okay, perfect. Yeah, nothing too crazy, like 600 square feet in like Gresham area, since we haven't really seen in city of Gresham that much spaces aside from DHS, of course. So that's good. All right. Well, thank you guys. Perfect.
All I was going to add to that, Argent, is that when you look at the budget template, as well as in the application, the narrative requirements, just you might get some hints there on where it would be appropriate to place and structure some of your ideas around space usage, as well as how to, again, like narrate and explain what the needs are and how you're going to provide those services in that space. So just look over those sections again when you're filling it out. That might be helpful.
Yep, we'll do that. Thank you. And I guess since I don't know if there's another hand, but I believe Marwar was asking a really great question in terms of needs assessment and a centralized management of data. That's something that we are actually, like, we've been working on a sophisticated like platform for us to help us manage and see, like, not just like the services offered, but like just making sure on the Afghan community right here in Oregon, like who they are, do they need help, do they need do they want guidance, empowerment? We're here for them. But that was a great question in terms of central management, because what is a good I guess successful example of something that has worked and meeting need, like tracking, like, oh, these guys have gotten support, or in the last 2 years, but so that's why we can't give the money or make them eligible. Is it through financial statements, or how do you guys have seen like this play out or work successfully? In I guess the assessing the 7,000, so that we make sure that they're like it's their first time getting this need or met.
The central database is a bigger conversation regarding coordinating services across all of our contracted service providers, and we are working on it at the state level. It's just complicated. We're developing a new database where our contractors would be able to look at all of that information, but it's in the early stages. We're trying to work on a workaround for that as well. Again,
no, that's perfect.
It's it's something that we are looking into. But if we dive into that conversation, I think it's gonna sidetrack from this current funding application.
So then I guess it's really hard to like find. I guess what you're saying is like the data, like it's a problem. We're solving it, but the tool isn't there yet. So
yes, we are trying to coordinate and find a workaround in the meantime until our database becomes online.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I get what Arjun is saying, that once we have that data available, we're going to be able to show those very tangible success stories, like, okay, we have this amount of population that moved from here to here, and I know that there's a lot of success stories out there as well in the community. So yeah, thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions that you want us to clarify? Okay, it looks like we have answered most of those questions. If something comes up between now and the submission of your application by next week, November 10th, by 11:59 p.m., don't hesitate and ask us, let us know, send us an email, and we will try to answer those questions. We want those applications to be as detailed and well drafted as possible, so we can make a good determination with those organizations. Alrighty, anything from our team before we finalize the meeting?
A heads up is there was just another announcement released that there is some funding available for Ukrainians as well, for eligible Ukrainian individuals. So if you haven't received an announcement yet and you would like to see the link for where to find that information, Stephanie just put it in the chat. Thank you so much. So there's actually now funding available for Ukraine. This is actually all federal funding. Therefore, it has to abide by all of the requirements that are cited there. So just make sure that you take a look at that as you're going through the application and see what is allowable under these funding streams and within the categories. But just heads up for you that this funding will be posted for a couple weeks as well. So the dates are on the announcement.
And Misty, I assume that the eligibility process and the application process will be similar to the Afghan one, just with some differences. And then one of the main differences is the funding sources that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I believe we're anticipating doing the same type of thing for our Ukrainian announcement. It's just, we're just giving you all the heads up because it just came out today. So.
All righty. So if we don't have any other questions or comments, thank you very much all for participating today. We're looking forward to receiving your applications, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you all for this.
Thank you so much.
Have a great
Thank you.
weekend.